It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of December 19th, 1997. My initial plan was to do 6 movies, but for the first time, in the times I've done this, I've had not one, but 2 movies that I could not find any clips for. I couldn't find anything for Will It Snow for Christmas, even though there was a Wikipedia page for it, but there's no footage online for me to use, so I can't talk about that one. Honestly, it doesn't matter because I haven't seen that one, nor have I seen Guy, which I can't even find anything on that film either, so... originally going to be 6 movies, but it's going to be 4 movies today, and that's probably for the best, because we still have a packed show, considering the films that we're going to be talking about here. And what better way to start off than with the biggest grossing film that weekend, and that is, of course, this film by James Cameron about the Titanic and how it sank in 1912. You got these nobodies, Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet. It's got this big budget behind it. It was the most expensive film ever made at the time. Clearly, it didn't leave much of a lasting impact afterwards, but let's go ahead and talk about Titanic.
Iceberg, right ahead! Nothing has prepared you for Titanic. Oh, let go. 20th Century Fox and Paramount Pictures present Leonardo DiCaprio.
We have to stay on the ship as long as possible.
Kate Winslet.
You jump high, jump broke.
From James Cameron. Director of T2 and True Lies. Titanic, rated PG-13. Starts Friday, December 19th at theaters everywhere.
Yeah. No lasting impact whatsoever. I mean, it's a film that barely made any real attention back then. Nobody really went to go see it. It was a big bomb. It made over the budget was $200 million. I mean, nobody really went to, okay, I'm going to stop this right now, because you know what because really, do I need to say anything more about this movie? It's freaking Titanic, man. Yeah, Titanic, everything I just told you was a complete lie. I mean, this was a film that not only was a huge hit, like it was a film that was in the top position at the box office for several months, and made over $1 billion. It was the first film ever to reach the $1 billion mark. It swept the Academy Awards, winning 11 Oscars, including Best Director and Best Picture. It tied Ben-Hur for the most Oscars won for a film. It made stars out of Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. It had a huge budget behind it, and that's probably the only real interesting thing I could say about the production of this, because this thing started shooting all the way back in 1995. It took them almost 3 years to get this movie into theaters, and this movie was supposed to be released in the summer of 1997. In fact, you see posters online where it has the original summer 1997 date on there, because it was supposed to come out on July 2nd, 1997. I guess maybe to try to do what they did with Independence Day the year before, because this is a co-production of 20th Century Fox, and technically it's now considered a co-production of Disney too. So, but got pushed back. There was a lot of backlash actually behind the scenes before this movie came out. I mean, when you really think about it, think about what this movie had to deal with. The movie had to be pushed back big time. The effects weren't ready. The film was using these massive amounts of production material, scale models, CGI. I mean, they like I said, they began shooting this movie all the way back in 1995, almost 3 years before the thing actually came out. And so nowadays, when you have a movie like this that's been in production hell for a number of years, most of the time it's not going to end up being any good. Like, most of the time it doesn't make the money back that it should. Case in point, we just had with The Flash, all that built up they had for that film, and the film turned out to be a major disaster for Warner Brothers. And some would have said that this movie could have been a major disaster for Paramount and 20th Century Fox. I mean, this is a film that excuse me. Thank God social media wasn't around back then, because they would have trashed this movie before it even came out. This movie would not be the substantial hit that it is now if social media had existed back then, which it didn't. And you know what? Even at the beginning, when it started making its money, it did not do gangbuster business at first. It made, I think, $28 million on its opening weekend. But for a film that had a $200 million budget, that's not the best way to start off the film. But start off your gross when you're trying to make this money back. But as time went on, Titanic slowly but surely began to increase its popularity. I mean, it stayed, like I said, it stayed as the #1 movie at the box office for about 4 months. I mean, it didn't really lose its mark until April of 1998, when Lost in Space came out. I think that's what it was. Let me just double checking here just to make sure. Yeah, April 1998, when Lost in Space came out, and You know, the film benefited first off by having the Christmas holiday come up after that. I mean, it made almost half of it made an additional half more than what the first weekend was. It gained 23% of an audience the following week, and then only had like small drop-offs, like a 6% drop-off, a 13% drop-off, a 15% drop-off. Its biggest drop-off really did not happen until, let me see if I can find it here, well into September. I mean, this thing was like, the biggest drop it had was 79% on September 4th, 1998, and by that point, the movie had already been out on videotape at that point, so yeah, this film was a real game changer for a number of reasons. I mean, this is a film that really, showed that just because a movie doesn't open big the first time around doesn't mean you should consider it dead on arrival. And lo and behold, that's what happened with this film. And I keep talking about the box office, but what about the movie itself? I will say this though, I like the movie. I don't love it though. I mean, it goes back to when I first saw this movie in theaters when I was about, I think this might have been around the time when my 9th birthday was coming up on January 10th of that year in 98. And we went to go see the movie, and I was really bored by the first half of it, honestly. I was really watching this movie, and I'm thinking to myself, when is this damn ship gonna get hit by the iceberg already? Because I want to see the fun stuff here. And, you know, as a kid, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not really interested in this relationship between Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. I mean, I don't think that... I'm a 9-year-old kid. I want to see action. I want to see. It's like I watch Ninja Turtles and I watch Ninja Turtles for a living. I want to see the action here. Damn it! And sure enough, when I saw the ship get hit and the rest of the movie is the ship slowly but surely going into the ocean with people falling off and dying and all that, I was just like, okay, now you won me back. You won me back over, and that's really the best thing I remembered about that movie. Seeing it for the first time when I was 9 years old. I've, of course, seen this movie a lot since then. It's been on TV numerous times. I mean, I have it on video, I have it on DVD, I have it on Blu-ray. I will say this, though. I didn't like the relationship between the romantic storyline between Winslet and DiCaprio when I was a kid. As an adult, I have slowly but surely gone to coming back around to it. I do think it is very well done. It works because you have Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet working off of each other really well here. Like I said, these were two actors who... This movie really branched them out into superstardom at this point. I mean, this was a film that really launched their careers big time, and they were really good in the movie. They both had a great chemistry together. You really did buy into their storyline, their relationship, and it was a very entertaining film. It was a very entertaining relationship, I should say, and great cast overall here. I mean, Billy Zane is so cartoonishly over the top in this film, but at the same time, you can't help but love him for it. I mean, the guy puts his all into this, even though he's acting off of his over the top. Like, he's still one of the fun things about the movie overall. Like the overall storyline before we hit the iceberg still is not the strongest. I think the main thing that's holding it together is the relationship between Winslet and DiCaprio. Like, you believe their relationship and you want it to succeed, but we know that now from history that does not happen. And of course I thought for the shipwreck, I thought maybe these effects were going to be dated by the time I watched it again, but no, every time I watch it, I still feel like I'm that kid again, watching it in theaters for the first time, just like, wow, this is impressive stuff. Like, the CGI in this movie holds up really well here, and the tension that builds as the ship is slowly but surely going down. You're seeing people trying to get off on the rescue boats, and some of them don't make it, some of them fall to their deaths, they slide down the thing as it's sliding down. The ship coming apart is still very tense. I mean, everybody falling off the ship one by one as the ship is slowly but surely going down. I mean, it still affects you. It still is a very effective element of the film, and that's really why I keep going back to it. I mean, I really want to say, I like seeing that part again. It's a film that really does hold up after all these years, and it's just something that really makes this movie stand out as memorable to me. Like, the film overall is a very good film. It's not a completely perfect film. It's not a great film story-wise, but overall, the film itself, all around, it's a very entertaining movie. I think it works in the first half for just Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio's story alone. But the real stuff is in the second half of the movie, when you see the ship slowly but surely going into the ocean. Like, that, to me, still holds up very well. And if I had to choose between this and the one that they did back in the 50s, now I can't remember the name of it. A Night to Remember, which came out in the 1950s, 1958 to be precise. And to me, that's the superior Titanic movie to me. A Night to Remember, you can look at it and see it. It's slow-paced, quiet, doesn't get really intense or engaging until about halfway through the iceberg hits. I'm thinking of Titanic, but the James Cameron Titanic movie, the tension and thrill really gets going almost immediately after the iceberg hits. And with A Night to Remember, there is more of a sense of this historical and accuracy to what happened the night the Titanic sunk, while the Cameron film tries to play more of the romantic aspect between DiCaprio and Winslet, but still tries to keep most of the historical aspects in check. Despite the two major differences are the effects, for obvious reasons. A Night to Remember came out in 1958, and it pales the ship going down pales in comparison to the effects in the original Titanic, but in the Titanic movie, I should say. But there were still some pretty solid effects to make it look like the ship is tipping everywhere with no CG whatsoever. I mean, for 1958, these are some really impressive effects. I mean, the Cameron movie has the benefit of going for a mix of practical and CG to make the sinking more epic, but if you're wondering why the ship breaks into two in the original Night to Remember, it wasn't revealed until well after that movie came out that the ship broke into two and it was sinking. So it's really interesting that no one ever talks about that movie, but Titanic is a good movie. I personally myself don't think it's the classic that everybody makes it out to be. I think the romantic aspect is kind of the weakest part about it, despite Winslet and DiCaprio working off each other. The film doesn't really get going for me until the iceberg hits the ship, and the tension and thrill factor comes into play as the ship slowly but surely sinks into the abyss. And I think A Night to Remember is the far superior film. It's a shorter movie. The characters, I think, are much better. The story works much smoother. The effects still hold up very well here. I think it deserves a lot more attention. I guarantee people will find more to like about that movie than they would with James Cameron's movie. Not to say that Titanic is bad, but if I had to be asked, I would rather take A Night to Remember than Titanic. At least that's my personal take on it. So, but regardless, Titanic is a classic. It's a good film, but I think it gets better once the iceberg hits, and that's where the tension really begins. So I went a little bit long on that one, but it's Titanic. You can't blame me for that. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. The movie that dared to go up against Titanic. Actually, they probably thought they would beat Titanic with all the negative buzz that was coming out before it. Pierce Brosnan in the second James Bond movie, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yesterday is a memory. Today is history. Tomorrow is in the hands of one man. Bond. You know the rest. Shooting around the world.
Yeah, MGM basically thought that Titanic was going to crash and burn at the box office and nobody was going to go see it. But, yeah, it opened up on the same day that Titanic did and led into the box office numbers, not getting anywhere near close to what Titanic ended up with. Even though it was pretty close on that opening weekend, just $3 million was the difference between Titanic and Tomorrow Never Dies at the top two spots at the box office. But other than that, though, I think the movie as a whole is a step down compared to GoldenEye. At the same time, it's not a bad movie. It's just kind of underwhelming. It does have some impressive action sequences. Terry Hatcher and Michelle Yeoh at their hottest in this movie. I mean, good lord. You have pretty good music in here. The opening song by Sheryl Crow is very good. Everything else is kind of lackluster. The bad guy is basically just Steve Jobs. The guy's literally Steve Jobs mixing in with the beat of the media mogul that is Donald Trump. And he really is just a corny and predictable villain. He's not a great villain overall. Although I will say he has one of the most badass death scenes in the movie, where James Bond is because the whole thing about him is that he's a media mogul, like he's a power hungry media mogul, he's a main company man behind newspapers. You could say that he's kind of a parallel to somebody like Rupert Murdoch, or somebody that is like someone like that. And the way he dies in this movie, at the end of the movie, it's hilarious, and it's also pretty damn grisly too. Like James Bond is like pulling on his shirt, and he's like, "You forgot the first rule of mass media, Elliot." And this thing that's like the dude's got this drilling machine, and he's trying to destroy a bomb with that. And James Bond is just like, give the people what they want. And he's pushing the media mogul, the bad guy, into this thing, and the guy's just sitting there going, no, 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 and like you could move too. Like James Bond gets quickly off screen, and the guy just dies after that. Like, it's so over the top, it's so intense, and it's so violent. But goddamn, man, that's probably one of my favorite aspects about the movie, is the way the villain dies in that film. And like it's interesting too, because the main villain dies before the other villains do. Like, it's very, very interesting. And this is a big step in the right direction for this director, who also did the infamous Stop on My Mom Will Shoot. I mean, talk about a 5-year difference between directing one of the worst comedies ever made to directing a James Bond movie. So hey, as Kevin Garnett used to say, anything is possible. So, but even the plot for the bad guy to take over the world is really weak. It suffers from really having a bad story, and it's just so lazy in the story department. Tomorrow Never Dies is a movie that just feels rushed in the story and in the villain department, but still gets by somewhat by its action scenes, that death scene at the end, and the 3 main lead characters. It's not a bad movie per se, but it isn't a great one either. I'd say watch it at your own risk. It's probably good for a one-time watch, but other than that, yeah, I wouldn't go back and watch it over and over again. So, anyway, that is Tomorrow Never Dies, so let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Mouse Hunt.
Late one night, as it must to all men, death came to the old man. To his 2 sons, he left this house. But behind this door, inside these walls, someone watches. He sees all. He knows your fear. Because in this house, he's the big cheese. From Dreamworks comes a story of 2 men, a house, and a mouse. Wrong mouse.
I just want to warn you about this mouse.
I know how to beat them.
I don't think we'll be seeing any more of that.
Mouse hunt.
We need a cat. I'm talking one mean pussy.
Yeah.
Another one of DreamWorks' early films that came out in 1997, just a couple months after the studio released their first film, The Peacemaker, and this is their first major kids film with Nathan Lane, Lee Evans, and directed by Gore Verbinski in his feature film directorial debut. And the film basically follows Lane and Evans are basically 2 Laurel and Hardy-esque like brothers, and they're struggling against one small but crafty house mouse for possession of the mansion, which is willed by their father. And this is played by William Hickey, who died before this movie came out. Of course, William Hickey, you will know him from stuff like Edward Scissorhands. Was it Kiss of the Spider Woman he was in that he got the Oscar for? Prizzi's Honor. I'm thinking of something else. Prizzi's Honor, but most of you know him as Uncle Lewis from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and the Doctor from A Night Before Christmas. But as far as Mouse Hunt goes, this is a really damn funny movie. I mean, this is basically a live-action Looney Tunes cartoon meets with a live-action Tom and Jerry cartoon, and mixed it with a little bit of Home Alone. This was the better Home Alone movie that came out in 1997, and not Home Alone 3. And that should really tell you everything you need to know about this movie. I mean, it's a slick, funny comedy. They know they're not taking themselves way too seriously, and you do feel for the mouse in this movie. Like there's a part of the movie that you see a little bit in the trailer there, where the mouse has this nice little home within the walls of his house, and he's going to sleep, everything's okay, and then all of a sudden this giant nail gun is like threatening to take his life, and he's running for his life. And it's just like, that's a pretty intense scene, and you feel bad for this mouse at times in this movie, but actually, but the movie overall, you feel bad for pretty much everybody at some point in this film. Like, it's a really funny movie. It's a little bit too dark at times, but sometimes it goes. You need to take full advantage to go completely dark on something. Like, this is a fun movie, man. I just love this movie so much. I love the jokes in here. I thought it was very funny. I thought it was very creative. I thought the effects overall did a pretty good job. I mean, for $38 million, this doesn't look too bad, especially nowadays. I mean, you couldn't. I don't think you do half the stuff now without having a a bigger budget than that. I mean, maybe 3 times that budget at least. But it just depends on how you use it, probably too. So, but yeah, the movie is very funny. It shows what Gore Verbinski can do as a director. Written by Adam Rifkin, who's written a lot of good stuff. Christopher Walken has a role in here as well. It's just a really funny movie, man. It's just a movie that I watched it the first time, and I had no idea what I was going in for, but I laughed a lot, especially towards the end of the movie. It's really hilarious stuff. Like, I can't recommend this movie enough. Mouse Hunt, great movie. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. You're doing yourself a huge disservice by not doing so. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last movie. Robert Redford in an Oscar-awarding... See, I did it again. Robert Duvall, not Robert Redford, Robert Duvall in an Oscar-nominated performance in The Apostle.
Duvall, Academy Award nominee for Best Actor of the Year. In the role America's top critics are calling one of the 10 greatest performances of all time.
What should I do? Tell me.
Feel the power of The Apostle. 4 stars. Amazing. Miraculous. A triumph. Robert Duvall, Farrah Fawcett, and Billy Bob Thornton. Don't miss the Academy Award contender that's nothing short of astonishing. The Apostle.
Coming soon to theaters everywhere.
So not only does Robert Duvall star in this movie, he also writes and directs it, and he plays a preacher from Texas who's got a happy life with a beautiful wife, played by Farrah Fawcett, but suddenly his world crumbles as his wife is having an affair with this young minister. Sonny gets enraged and hits Horace with a softball bat, putting him into a coma. He leaves town, takes on a new name as Apostle E.F., and goes to Louisiana. Then he starts to work as a mechanic for a local radio station owner, and he lets him preach on the radio and starts to preach everywhere, on the radio, on the streets, and with his new friend, Reverend Brackwell, he starts a campaign to renovate an old church. And it seems kind of preachy. It seems like the church equivalent to something like Tender Mercies, which he won the Oscar for. He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor in this movie as well. But it is a very entertaining film, and it works because Duvall is giving it his all in the film. And I think there's a great cast to support the material here. Farrah Fawcett, Miranda Richardson, Walton Goggins, June Carter, Billy Bob Thornton. I mean, there's a great cast involved in this film, and it's a very entertaining film. It's a very compelling story that you get invested in, and you do wonder how it's going to pan out when it's all said and done. And I think they did a very good job on it, honestly. I think it's a really solid film. It shows what Robert Duvall can do as a director and a writer as well. I think he has a lot of good potential there, and I don't know if he did anything else after this. Actually, he did a couple other movies that I'm not too familiar with. Assassination Tango and Wild Horses. But like I said, I don't know too much about those films, so I don't know if they're any good or not, but this one actually is. I definitely recommend it, The Apostle. So on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and next week will be the last weekend for 1997. On this list here, we have here 11 movies, and considering that the next week is going to be 2 movies, the next week after that's 1 movie, I'm going to try to split these up as much as I can. So for this next episode we're going to look at the 6 big new releases that came out on Christmas Day of 1997. We're going to talk about James L. Brooks' As Good as It Gets, Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown, the American Werewolf in London sequel that everyone was clamoring for, even John Landis, who had nothing to do with it, An American Werewolf in Paris, Kevin Costner's infamous The Postman, Leslie Nielsen in Disney's Mr. Magoo, and Barry Levinson's Wag the Dog with Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. So we're going to look at those 6 movies next time around, and then we'll save the rest of these, Ma Vie en Rose, Kundun, Afterglow, The Winter Guest, and The Education of Little Tree for the next episode after that. So the 6 movies, As Good as It Gets, Jackie Brown, American Werewolf in Paris, Postman, Mr. Magoo, Wag the Dog. Those are the films we'll cover next time on this show. And with that said, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. So until the next time I see you, take care.